All
Let's
right,
do
Gary, take it
this.
away.
Yeah, this is the moment where I have to introduce the show for the first time, and it's totally rehearsed, and I'm completely prepared. What's the name of the show? Triathlon.
Triathlon Thrive Talks T3.
Just kidding. Okay, yeah,
You tricked
this is
me.
going great. We're here today with Alex Lawson. He has done some things that blow my mind. So let's talk about the Javelina 100K. That was this year. Bad Dog 50K was this year. Or is that last year?
50 mile. It was this year.
50 miler. Ironman Indiana.
Yep.
A number of 70.3s.
Yep.
How many did you stack up of 70.3s?
I have 4 so far.
4. So for a lot of people listening, I think the first question is going to be, what is the matter with you? Why are you doing this to yourself? This sounds painful and awful. So my version of the question is, what brings you to long distance endurance sports, and what pulls you into that kind of distance?
I think it's always the pursuit of just more, just a longer adventure, kind of proving what I'm capable of. I mean, the story goes, it goes pretty far back, but as far as endurance goes, there's something to me that's like almost romantic about being out there for, 6, plus hours on the course. So it's just that adventure side and always looking for more. Is really
Yeah, with Javelina, that was you stacked up 14 hours, something like that out there?
1650.
My God, dude.
I wish it were shorter. Sometimes you get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, that 70.3 took me 8 hours. And you're like, okay, well, that's really not that good, but you got it done anyway. But yeah, 16 hours, 50 minutes. And it's running that distance and with the hills and, through the desert, it's a different, it's just different than running like on a flat, road course or anything like that. It's just, you're always looking 5 steps ahead and you're just so much slower than you ever thought you'd be. Even your slowest training miles are like your fastest miles out there. So it's different.
That was the 100 miler or the 100?
That was 100K.
What was the distance? 100K?
Yeah, so that was the Javelina 100. It was the 21st year they've done it, and it's out in Arizona, Fountain Hills, Arizona. It's at McDowell Mountain Regional Park. So they have a 100-mile race, which is they call it like a golden ticket race. So there's a really big 100-mile race called the Western States 100. And if you finish, top 2, male, female, they get a golden ticket to the Western States 100, which is notoriously hard to get into. You have to run a qualifying race. You have to put your name in a lottery. Some people, it takes them like 11 years to get picked in the lottery. I think that's like the longest it can take you to get picked. So, but they also have a 100K option. And if you don't know, it's a looped course. So it's essentially 20-mile loops. And the 100-mile does 5 loops, and then 100K does 3 loops.
Have you tried out for the Barclays then?
No, you know what? My wife and I, so she's gotten into running. She ran the Chicago Marathon this year, but we've watched some documentaries on Barclays, and I find it super fascinating. But I see how fast those guys are, and a loop takes them like 8 hours, and I go, I say there's no way, but it just doesn't speak to me at this point. I'm totally fascinated by it. I respect it, but I don't. It's not on my radar at this point.
So I've not stacked up that long of a day. Thinking about that kind of race where you have to do almost orienteering, finding where you're going, finding the papers, right, things like that. Mentally, when you're 13 hours into a run, like what does that look like? See, like if you can place yourself in the Barclays Marathon, how can you imagine yourself stumbling around trying to find a piece of paper 13 hours into running?
I don't even know, because at Javelina, I was out on my 3rd loop. I started my 3rd loop at about 5 or 6 p.m. and it was just starting to get dark. And I get through aid station 1, which is about 4.5 miles into the course. And then I'm on the next section and I'm thinking, wow, I haven't had a bad moment today. Like I haven't had a low in my day. And that was like,
that's the worst thing to
that's
think.
the kiss of death. It was like,
yep.
I was like, this has been amazing. And it really was. It had been great up to that point. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start kicking rocks and you start like you stub your toe a couple times and you're really walking a lot more than you had been. You're not feeling very good. Nutrition is going down a lot slower. And you're like, I knew that there was an aid station coming up, like it, but it just felt like it was never going to come. I like never knew. I thought it was like, oh, it's around the next corner. Oh, I think I hear some music. Oh, what are those lights up there? Like, is it the aid station? So doing Barclays, to me, that's like, you're in the pitch black out there. You may be going counterclockwise on the course, totally disoriented. I'm sure the low moments out there are like lower than you could probably imagine for most races outside of anything crazy happening personally to you.
And for those who aren't familiar with the Barclays, the idea is you don't really have aid stations. You have to find a book out at some point in the course and rip out the page that matches your bib number. And if you miss a book, you miss your bib number, you're disqualified because you didn't hit every piece of the course. So not only are out there surviving a ridiculous course, but you're also having to do a lot of mental work to stay on the. It's not mapped like a nice, beautiful 50K or what have you. It's a whole different jungle. So it's kind of.
But what made me think of it was when Alex was saying how you had to qualify for his race and you have to apply and you have to do the same thing for the Barclays. You have to, well, one, you have to figure out how and where to send in your application, and then you're still not guaranteed to get accepted.
Yeah.
And then,
or go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say the other thing, Alex, you were saying is as soon as you start thinking things are going good, you know it's going to go downhill real quick. Anytime I think, oh man, I can keep this pace forever, I know in 5 minutes I'm going to feel like I have to quit. It's wild how that happens.
Yeah, and that was, you know, that part of the course between aid station 1 and 2 at Javelina is, that's the hardest part of the course. It's like 6.5 miles. It's slightly more rugged than the rest of the course. It is where you get most of your elevation gain. It is just a gradual climb. It doesn't look like it when you're out there, but it's a steady, I don't know, I'm going to say like 2 to 3% grade. It feels like the whole time. There's some undulations, but I knew as long as I get to that point, I would be okay. But I don't know, maybe around mile like 45, I'm like really starting to have doubts of like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to be out here anymore. But you get to the aid station and you know, get recharged a little bit.
Are you more of a runner than a triathlete now?
I've been asked that a lot recently, which by like some friends in our triathlon group. This year was definitely the focus, was ultra this year. I did a 70.3 Texas, which was like our team race this year. So we made a family trip down to Galveston, and that was actually the only triathlon I did this year. But no, I still have, I have interest in both. And I'm getting back in the pool now, and I'm biking a lot more. And so, no, I don't consider myself a runner, more of a triathlete at this point.
So I was going to say one thing that, you and I have talked about, not only finishing the race is impressive, but following you on Strava, seeing you knock out a 20, 30-mile run before I'm up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Is pretty incredible. So I'd be curious to hear, how you found a way to do that, not only once or twice, but repetitively. Like you've found that to be a pattern. So as somebody who struggles to get a run in at 7 a.m., what are you doing to make that work?
So I used to be like an afternoon workout person. I would work out in the morning if I had to. If like life said, hey, you got something in the afternoon. If you want to work out today, you got to do it at 5 a.m. Well, I've got a 15-month-old. He's 15 months as of today.
No, I don't understand that. If you I can't do that. I don't know how.
I don't know either. And so, you know, so let me take you back to September 2022. After we had our son, my wife's in the hospital. She's like, I want to run the Chicago Marathon. She wanted to do one of the majors, and Chicago was like the closest one. So she signs up for Chicago. She gets picked in the lottery. And I had signed up for Javelina on January 1st, 2022. So like I committed like super early, and you know, she was already committed to Chicago. And we kind of got to the point as our runs became longer, we both could not reasonably do our long runs on Saturday. There was no way I was going to go out for 23-mile run, and then she was going to go out for and run 15 to 20 after me. Like, our household would be doing an ultra marathon in a day, and then we're raising a kid and, you know, having to watch him and all that entails. It was just not possible. So we kind of came to the compromise. It's like, if I really want to do this, I said, you can have Saturday. I will do my long run Friday before I go to work. And so you start doing the math in your head. You're like, okay, if I'm averaging, 10:45 minutes per mile or 11 minutes per mile, how long is it going to take me? It's like, oh shit, this is going to take me like 3.5, 4 hours in some cases. And I just wanted it that bad. And I wanted her also to succeed at her race. So I had to like make that compromise of, okay, her finishing her race is almost, if I could pick one of the two, I would have her finish her race and me not finish mine. Like, that's how much I cared about her training. So I just made that sacrifice, and it was what I wanted to do. And I almost took some pride in it, because people around me at work thought I was like freaking nuts. They're like, wait, hold on. What time did you get up? And you were down on the Katy Trail at 3:45 in the morning. Like, wait, you ran 20 miles this morning? Like, it was almost this kind of fun thing to come in on Friday and be like, hey, guess how far I ran this morning? And they just like,
you're that guy no one wants to see at the office. Everybody hates. No one cares what your strong is.
It wasn't like bragging, but it was kind of fun to like. Part of the fun of it was like them being like, dude, that's incredible. Like, what? Like, so it just became. I almost viewed it as like its own little race, where it was like, training that long, you have to treat it like a race. You got to get good sleep the night before. Your nutrition's got to be like on point. You got to have everything packed and ready to go, so that if I start at 3:45, I know I'll be done at 7 or whatever time, and then I can still get to work at a reasonable time.
That's what I think people don't take into account when these long blocks is how long it takes to get ready for. I spend 30 minutes mixing my waters, getting my gels, getting the cooler packed. It's absurd how much time it takes just to get out to be ready to exercise for 3 to 6.5 hours, depending on the activity.
Oh yeah. And I mean, the same thing for like Ironman. Like, Ironman training was like, people don't consider, it's like, I think in my peak Ironman training week, I want to say I worked out, like, this was just the time I was moving. It was like 18 hours or something.
Right.
And it was like my peak week, which I think was a lot, but you don't consider all the time, all the driving I did to go to the pool and back, the driving I did to go to wherever I was going to bike, the trips to Fleet Feet and to the, to the bike shop.
Once a week shower.
Right. Like,
I stopped showering. I cut showering out. That saves like
you got
an hour a week.
Oh, see, I have to shower before I go to bed. I don't know, like.
I'm sure my wife wants me to.
I was like, I'm kidding. I
No, I mean,
I'm not.
You can joke, Harry, but it's the truth. It's okay. You can tell us. But you have all that time that you put in there, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, dude, I spend like 23 hours a week, like, with stuff revolved around training, and that's not even like maybe mobility or stuff I do at night. Like it just becomes so encompassing. And if you want to do well at it, and you I mean, I think we all do, because we spend, full Ironman's like $800 or $900 just for the entry fee, and so you're gonna put the effort in.
Well, I wanted to ask you. Carrie introduced you saying you did the Indiana Ironman. Is that right?
Yeah.
So we did race against each other, because that was my first Ironman.
Was your first 2021?
Yeah, that's the only time they hosted the Ironman in Indiana. Yeah. It's always been a half.
Yeah, it's like one of the oldest halves, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so that's too funny you were out there. What if I like look back at my like finisher picture and I like see your name on
That'd be awesome.
I'm gonna have to go. I got a picture upstairs. I'll have to go look at it and see.
All right.
What was your finishing time?
It was 10:58 or something.
Shit. Okay, you got done when the sun was still up.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Zach. So if you watch the intro, it mentions that Zach is a competitive athlete and Carrie is mid-pack somewhere. Zach's always going fast and doing all that stuff. I'm hanging towards the mid-pack, getting my money's worth. If I'm paying $250 for a race, I'm gonna. That's why I'm hanging out in the mid-pack, getting my money's worth for the hours.
I hear you. I finished like right in the middle, I think, at Javelina, like 152 out of like 308 or something. Like it was right in the middle, so I was pretty happy.
It's funny and almost annoying at this point, where I am literally at the 50% mark on almost every race I've done in the last year. Like, not creeping forward, not falling backwards. I'm not mad about it, but it's just like every time I look at the race results, 30 people raced, I'm number 15. 300 people raced, I'm 150.
Yeah, but wait till you hit the next like age group, and like you're the young guy in the age group, and maybe you'll like bump up just by like default, like.
Yeah, I'm in the middle now, so I'm 32, so I'll hit 35, join the new age group. But that's when people kind of get back into things, and I'm into the long distance stuff, and that seems to be where the 35 to 39 range starts.
I never figured that out. I heard it's the 30s and then the 35s and then the 40s. So I think it's just any age group I'm in is the most competitive group is what I'm learning.
Because you have like a little bit of money, so you can buy really good equipment, and you probably have a good enough job where you have the flexibility to like train more, and then you've been doing it for a while, so you're like just good, and then it all kind of comes together, I guess.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, how are you doing your bike training? Because I see you got a treadmill back there. You got a trainer too for your bike?
Yeah, I've got the Wahoo kicker, and then I've got it hooked up to like Apple TV and just like a big screen there. So
where are you doing your riding outside if you are?
So I actually haven't. Well, if I'm riding, like I've got a road bike too. So I'll ride Katy Trail sometimes, like if I'm just kind of going for a casual ride. There's like there's some farmlands like pretty close to me, and it's almost like a little TT course. It's pretty flat. It's like 3.5 miles long, so you can do these like 7-mile loops. It's got a good shoulder, so I do that. Out in St. Charles, you've got Newtown. I used to do all my Ironman training out there, because you just you could bike like an hour and a half, 2 hours out and turn around and come back, and so that was a good spot too.
Well, I do about 99% of my time on the trainer, but the rest of the time's out at Wildwood, except for one time Carrie managed to get me out by his place, and I was thoroughly impressed with the trails he had out there.
MCTs.
The MCT, yeah, I was gonna say I've never been out there, but I've heard they're really nice.
I love it. I did learn recently there is a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I guess they're a little angrier about it. I saw a snarky kind of Facebook page or Facebook post on their page that said the 15-mile-an-hour rule applies to everyone, and
we destroyed that. We were going like 22, I think.
It's not uncommon. Like I always see people on their bikes, so I don't know.
Yeah, they have. I've seen that at like Creve Coeur Lake. I mean, that's not a great place to go ride around. Like at least for like fitness or like doing a workout, just because it's kind of tight and there's a lot of walkers and there are a lot of people not paying attention. But there's jokes made on like various Facebook groups about 15 miles an hour and
MCT is at least quiet enough that I don't feel like a jerk. And if there's people with strollers coming up, I will slow down a little bit. But I'll slow down and make sure we got room for people because it doesn't happen that often. So
sure,
that's not too bad. So you've done long distance triathlon and you did the 100K and the 50 miler. So I'm doing my we'll call it 100K, but my split race.
I'm curious to hear your perspective right now. I totally forgot. I'm doing it right now.
I'm curious your perspective on the differences between training for 100K and training for like a full distance Ironman. Not just, what is your training schedule like, but the differences between how it feels physically, like the logistics problems that we've talked about. Like how do you see those two different sports as far as training goes?
I'll tell you the biggest difference I think the two things that come to mind for me that I experienced this year training for my first, I would say my first like two like true ultra marathons. I did the Katy 82. We did a 3-man team 2 years ago, which I racked up 31 and a half miles that day. So
it was a hot day.
Yeah, that was challenging. It really was. I think I averaged like 10:30 over those 31 miles, which I was really happy about that day. But the biggest difference, ultra versus like full distance or even 70.3 is just, I got injured a lot this year, especially like feet. Like I was having plantar fasciitis in my foot really bad. And then it would cause, that would cause a calf cramp and, a calf strain. And so I feel like with triathlon training, you get to mix it up a little bit. So like you do have like, you maybe have 2 or 3 days in between a run and typically you're not doing a ton of like back-to-back runs. You might do a brick run and then a long run. But I didn't find myself, at least during, Ironman training, to be getting hurt all that often, or having like little injuries that would kind of nag for a majority of training. And then the biggest difference overall is nutrition. I thought nutrition, I was like, well, I know what it's like being out there for 14 and a half hours. Like I can take sugar the whole time, like, doing a full Ironman. Like that's just what I trained with, it's just what I'd always done. I can eat that all day. But I quickly realized that like, that just, when you're running, those sugars, like just after a while don't sit well in your gut. You can take them on the bike because you're not kind of like oscillating, up and down. And so I found myself turning to some more like solid foods or just different choices that I wouldn't have otherwise made during triathlon, because triathlon, it was just more intense. So taking in whole foods just isn't, for me, it wasn't anything I ever trained, and I think I would find it more difficult. But with ultra, it's so much slower, and you're able to like eat a peanut butter and jelly, like, if you're switching out bottles or something. I was able to do things like that to like kind of mix up the nutrition. There's a lot of carryover, but the biggest thing to me, the difference was like nutrition.
Yeah, I'm learning 5 hours is about my peak of how much I can take in gels for. Like I'm at my 70.3s, and I don't know if it's just because I know the end is coming up, and my body or my brain is saying we don't really need any more gels. You don't need them anymore, or just 5 hours is just kind of where my stomach starts drawing the line of I need something other than just this sugary substance.
You have to force yourself. Your body says no, but you got to shove it down.
I haven't had to yet because like I said, at 5 hours, I'm nearing the end of a 70.3 or I've neared the end of my run. So I don't know.
Would you say that your mind is telling you no, but your body is telling you yes?
That could very well be the case.
Oh, I just came up with that. I don't know. I haven't heard that from a song or anything.
It sounds catchy though. We should turn that into something.
No, but like, so at Javelina, like at the very first, I carried nutrition with me, the stuff I wanted, but the aid stations they had there were just like, I call them like mini convenience stores. It was like whatever you wanted. They had just, you name it, they had it. But I found myself going to like potato chips like right away, because I was like, I just want to like, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like, oh, I need potato chips. Like I have to fall back on this. I just wanted to start with it because I figured it was easier to take in early and everything. I do remember sitting at the very last aid station, and I had like, I think I had about 3.7 miles to the finish. And I was sitting there, I was talking to a guy, and I was like, all right, dude, all you got to do is take this one last gel. That's it. This is the last piece of nutrition you need. And I took the gel and went on my way. But I don't know, even like 16 hours in, I was able to take a gel. It had probably been a little bit since I had one, but sometimes you can force yourself to squeeze another one down.
Yeah, I guess I'll be finding out at some point.
Well, I just signed up, so I'll be with you at least on Sunday. You said Sunday, right?
Yes.
Okay. Woo.
So Zach, you're doing the 20 mile loop, or?
I'm doing whatever Carrie asks me to.
So basically, my game plan is I'm doing the 100K, and I'm going to I'm doing 40 to 50 miles on Saturday, and then wrapping up whatever's left on Sunday morning. The night running doesn't interest me. It doesn't really work with me either. So that's the game plan. So we'll see where we end up on Sunday.
Which is great, because I'm recovering from a stress fracture on my right foot. So hopefully I'll be in condition. Well, I've taken like a month off and it's still lingering. So I'm going to have to go get an x-ray and stuff. But I have two questions.
Yeah.
Well, I have two questions, Alex, and then I'll shut up and let Carrie and you guys chat. But one is, what else you got planned for 2024?
The only thing I'm officially signed up for in 2024, I got a charity spot for the Chicago Marathon. So my wife got picked again. I missed general sign up. So I'm doing a charity spot. So I got to raise like $1,700 for UMDF. It's the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. So my wife's got a coworker who has a daughter who has this mitochondrial disease. It's like a super rare genetic disease. And so I'll be raising money for that. So that's what I'm signed up for so far. But I'm looking at another full. I think that will be like the kind of big 2024 race. I'm just not sure when. I would love to do a summer race, like a July, like a Lake Placid or something, somewhere around that time. But I'll probably do some local stuff, and then do a big full, and then the Chicago Marathon, and that's probably it.
I say coming off the back of that is you've done some big things. So I'm curious to hear what you're kind of pulled towards next. And then as far as, is it a bigger distance? Is it a harder race? Is it a harder course?
So I have this like long-term goal. I'll tell you, the race I've been most fascinated with for I don't know how many years now is Badwater 135. That race to me is like, I mean, it literally looks like hell on earth with how hot it is. And just the sort of like resume that you have to put together to like even put your name in consideration for it. So I will look at 100-mile race at some point. I don't know when, with having a kid and then thinking about another one in the future. It's like, man, the commitment to a 100-mile race is quite a lot. So we'll see.
I was chatting with the race director of Shippy, and he does 100-milers. That's kind of, he's done a number of those. He said he does like a 9-hour training day, and which is such a huge commitment, and to have to do that multiple times leading in is pretty insane. Zach, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Badwater, but
am I showing it right now? Is this
it?
The famous trope that I've always heard is that it's so hot you cannot run on the asphalt. You have to stay on the white line. So you see that person right there in that photo? If you deviate from that white line, it's going to start burning the soles off your shoes because the heat is that intense.
Zach, the race, so Badwater 135, it starts in Badwater Basin, Death Valley, and goes to the Mount Whitney Portal Trailhead, which, if you don't know, the lowest point in the
U.S.
contiguous United States, and then Mount Whitney are like, I don't know, 80 miles apart or something like that. And so they run the race in July, and you have to get into the race, or to even put in an application, you got to run like 4 100-mile races, and they have to be considered like harder ones. It can't be, I don't know, like
probably Tunnel Hill won't qualify.
I mean, if you run a good time, like a really fast time at Tunnel Hill, which is just like a super flat course in the winter, maybe they just look for really tough 100-mile races, and they specifically look for hot races.
Yeah, here they are.
But so there are some of like their preferred races, and some of them are just like, they have one called like the Keys 100. You run from Miami to Key West. It's all sun, it's all pavement. There's no shade. You know, it's in May, so it's hot as could be down in Miami. That's the one that really, Badwater really intrigues me, just because I don't think a race gets harder than that, at least temperature-wise.
Yeah, that removes all interest for me. I'm
way too
not
hot.
My jam.
Nope, way too hot.
I would rather be in like 110 than like 10 degrees. Like, I just can't. I hate winter. Like, my wife and I talk about getting a cold plunge, and we both are like kind of the point where, like, I don't think we would act like. I don't think we'd actually.
I'm not going to see a 59er then here in a few weeks.
That's a month from now, the January 24th race.
Yeah, I just saw the email come out, and that's exactly what I was like, oh man, I don't know if because I won that race last year, and I don't know if I can even run it this year with my foot. I don't know what to do. Like, I want to support the race, but I also just don't want to like show up either. So I'm torn. All right. Well, here's my final question. How do you two idiots know each other?
That's the nicest way that he could phrase that. So we are coached by the premier St. Louis endurance coaching team, right? Yeah. Evolve Coaching Systems. I say that just as a shot to make fun of Zach for not being a part of it.
I know, right? I could tell, but I didn't want to interrupt you because that's all I've been doing today. But keep going.
I think that's where we met, right? Or do we?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. Like, I'm trying to think. I had either seen your name, or maybe it was like on one of the Zooms or something. But I remember warming up at Newtown like 2 years ago, and I used to have this like little apparel company called Mo Reps, and we did. I was really into CrossFit for years before I got into endurance, like during COVID, and so anyway, I'm warming up. I'm just running down the street and back at Newtown, and he goes, "Hey, Mo Reps," and I'm like, "This is like the first time I'd ever been noticed," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I got like a fanboy over here." No, but I don't know. We just. And I think we sort of knew of each other, but we hadn't met like in person yet. And then we, like you said, we had the same coaching system. We have different coaches, but same programming essentially.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that now.
Yeah, fanboy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I remember seeing your name around all the time, and recognize the logo, and it's like, all right, we're racing today. I think you smoked me that day. I
had a decent day. That was like my first season of triathlon, so, or maybe like second kind of.
I had a particularly bad day, and I got stopped by a train, and I remember I just like had a little like mini tantrum to myself about it. And so therefore like that totally changed my view of how I race, because I was so annoyed with how annoyed I was that it was very, very eye-opening for me that I let myself get really annoyed by that. So I remember that race very well.
Was that 21 or 22 when you got stopped by a train?
I don't know. There's like 15 or 20 of us that got stuck there.
Okay. Well, I think like Augusta 70.3, they have a train that will stop the race, but they have timing chips on either side of the tracks. So your time in between those doesn't count towards like your actual official.
So you get like a break to rest, and then
essentially, yeah. So
that's a good deal.
Kind of interesting.
All right, gentlemen, I gotta wrap us up here. We've gone way beyond what we said we would. So Alex, thanks for joining. We didn't even talk about CrossFit, so we'll have to have you on with our other CrossFit guests sometime and talk about how you became a betrayer, backstabber, traitor on the CrossFit lifestyle to become an ultra runner.
in a way, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. Thank you. See you guys.